On today's episode of the After the Timeout podcast, we sit down with Coach Ryan McCarthy, head coach of the Alaska Anchorage women's basketball program. We talk to Coach McCarthy about his Mayhem style of play, offensive philosophy, the overall success of his program, what it's like to coach and recruit in the state of Alaska, and his top 5 basketball shooters of all time. Remember to follow Coach McCarthy and his program on Twitter at UAAWBB. And now, time for the show.
Coach, yeah, that's awesome. Awesome to have you on. I think we wanted to kind of start. I think it's cool to learn about other programs and give you our coaches chance to spotlight. Some things that are going on in their program. I know you guys had signing day, right? Well, probably about a month ago now. Signed two players. I think there was maybe a athlete of the year award in your program as well. So
yeah,
maybe just spotlight some things that are going on in your program now, where you guys are at, what you guys are doing.
Yeah, we're excited about the 2 ladies that we signed. It was interesting because one of them had to come for less money than what we initially agreed on because of our entire roster is returning. Well, with the exception of one player, our entire roster returns. So we didn't anticipate that because we had 6 seniors. So when we were recruiting, we were looking at replacing 6, players that were going to make a big impact, and we're combing the United States to try to find the next impact type players. So one of them was a really good player out of Las Vegas that we felt was going to be one of the better freshmen in our league, and fortunately we had to kind of cut a deal and talk about a redshirt season her first year and stuff, where as a freshman she potentially could have got some significant playing time for us. So we're excited about both of them. And then our athlete of the year, we didn't really anticipate. The last time we in our program that we had an athlete of the year was the year that we played for the national championship in 2016.
Right.
And that was a really special player. I mean, she was, an All-American and, was probably our most talented player on that particular team. And this year we didn't really know. We felt we had the best team in the country, but there was no way to prove that. And the young lady that got it was a 5-year player. She was a redshirt her first year, played behind a really good point guard her first 3 years at UAA. So we were really proud of her for that, because to get athlete of the year at our school is really difficult. Our track team is really dominant. The female student athlete and the track team had set the NCAA all-time record in the 10K. So no one in the history of Division II. I think she got 2nd or 3rd place in a Pac-12 meet. So she was, multiple time national champion. We had a couple of Olympic skiers. For women's basketball to end up with that award, we were, really taken aback. So real fortunate there. But in terms of where we're at now, all of our ladies are going home for the longest Christmas break they'll ever have in the sport of basketball. And we have had 4 full team practices. And the rest of them have been around 4 people at a time. So some of these gals haven't even played with each other. We don't even know what our team is going to look like. But we're fortunate that we get gym time and that, we can give them some structure during the day. And we've had to come up with some creative ideas how to do that.
Yeah, that was kind of my next question, right on the court stuff. I know we're all looking for creative ideas. I know, here in Illinois where we are, we're kind of all virtual right now. So, maybe just some things you've been doing to connect with your kids when they're been on campus, when they weren't on campus. I think it's kind of cool to pick everybody's brain so everybody can take an idea and maybe make it their own and kind of work through what everybody's going through here.
Yeah, I think in March, when the NCAA tournament got hit, the first thing I did, honestly, when that day happened, I bought a bunch of stock because I knew the stock market was going to go down, and I went on my E-Trade account and I'm like, I'm dumping it. I'm buying Nike, I'm buying,
Right.
So I went on there and I got some pretty good deals, and I wish I would have invested in Zoom. I really do.
Right.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking. But yeah, we've done a lot of Zoom, virtual team meetings. We've gone through, books with our ladies. I know that, training captains is really important in our program. We place a lot of emphasis on that position, and we place a lot of emphasis on giving them a lot of rope on our team, just in terms of, their responsibility. So, one of the books that we ended up reading was a really good one by a guy named Jocko Willink, who's a former Navy SEAL, called Extreme Ownership.
Yeah.
And it's been really good for our leaders, and just our team in general, when you take a look at your organization like that. So, and then in Alaska, we're in a place where people come on vacation. So, typically not teenage girls will come to Alaska on vacation. So we've, our latest team activity that we did, we went ice fishing, and that was pretty fun. A lot of the ladies had never been before, and we have a couple Hawaiians that are used to, fishing out in the ocean. And so it was kind of cool to cut a hole in the lake and sit there in a tent, and get to know the gals a little bit. So, just things like that, off the floor that we've been able to do and take advantage of where we're at.
So, I think that's interesting, Coach. And, it kind of leads into my next question. What are some of the challenges of coaching in Alaska? Obviously, coaching in Alaska, recruiting has to be interesting. Do you feel it's harder to recruit in Alaska? I personally, when I coached Division III, I actually coached a player from Alaska, and she was in Illinois with us, and she didn't get to see her family very often. And I saw on your roster you had a couple of young women from Hawaii. So what was that like to talk them into go from Hawaii weather to Alaska weather? That had to be interesting.
Yeah, it's not the easiest job in the world. We do have some things that kind of level the playing field. We're funded well from a scholarship standpoint, so we are a fully funded Division II school. From that standpoint, we have some cool perks. Alaska Airlines made us, we have like a UAA jet, so it's real unique for like a Division II kid to be like, oh my gosh, there's a, UAA plane. Our facility is, I think, I've only been in maybe 3 or 4 that are better than it. And one of them I'd say is Oregon. On the West Coast, I'd say Oregon has a better facility than us, but we'd be in the top half of the Pac-12 in terms of facilities. So we have those things going for us, but in terms of location, yeah, it's tough. I mean, the majority of time that I'm told no during the recruiting process, the reason will be location. And it's tough because we're seen as this foreign country, and it's such a long flight for a lot of kids, and especially at the high school level, it's really difficult for us. We're kind of JUCO junction up here outside of maybe like a local kid from high school, and then recruiting within our state is really difficult. Outside of Anchorage, and probably within a 3-hour radius of Anchorage, you're going to have to fly to anywhere else that you want to go. And then there's villages that we do camps in the summertime where they're off the road system. So the only way that you can get there is you fly in on a like a dirt, you call it a runway, I guess, but it's dirt. Sometimes if it's real nice, it's gravel, and you can fly there and they come pick you up on an ATV or something like that. And they take you to the gym and you spend the night in the gym and stuff like that. So it's different. And one of our players this year's from a village called King Cove, and she had 40 people in her school. And yeah, so I asked her, like, what's prom like when it was going to be the odd man out on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and all there is to do is to play hoops. So it's interesting, recruiting our state because it's so big, and recruiting down in the lower 48. The one area that we've had a lot of success is in Hawaii, because there's a lot of similarities from a culture standpoint. And we do we're really committed to our team. We are, from a time standpoint, and making sure that they have the best experience that we can provide, because you're going to get homesick up here. That's the reality of the situation. So we make sure and try to spend as much time as we can with them.
So, when you're recruiting, you're out on the road, and you and I have talked about, the mayhem and the thought process and the style itself, the back of your jersey say mayhem. So, when you're out looking for a recruit, you're watching young ladies, and you're looking for the next generation of player, what are those characteristics you're looking to recruit that fit that mindset?
I look at a couple things. The first one that is always going to jump out to me when I'm like, particularly I guess at any position, is athleticism. I think, those kinds of things stand out. We'll typically take an athlete over like the skill kid that maybe is too slow for the Division I level or something like that. I'd rather take the unpolished athlete and teach them, the fundamentals of what we're doing. And then I think a big thing that I think nowadays it's a skill. I think back in the olden days when, we played, where your coach would make you take a charge from the whole team, things that would be like illegal now, we're playing hard was something that was kind of beat into, for lack of better terms, back, in the 90s. And nowadays I see it as a skill. If you play hard and you really compete, I think that's a skill, and we place a very high premium on that, because when they come play for us, the one thing that I promise their parents is that no coach in the whole country will demand more from them than I will. And we may not say, okay, you become a basketball robot and we have you here for 11 months, but our 2 hours is going to be harder than any 2 hours, and it doesn't matter what level it is. So that's what we look for.
So you kind of touched on it too. I thought it was interesting. I look at your schedule. You guys went to North Carolina, played Duke last year. You went to Florida. Obviously, that takes a commitment on the athletics program's part too, right? Is that something with your schedule you've always been allowed to do, or is it something you've had to build up to, like that kind of the dynamic between the athletic director, the athletics department, and your schedules and what you guys do?
No, it's always been like that here. In fact, the job when I first got here, it was kind of a mess. We had inherited major infractions from the previous coaching staff, and my first recruiting class was 3 intramural players because I had gotten hired in August. So we basically built it up from the ashes, because it was good before we got here, but not the right way, I guess. And the athletic department has made a commitment to it. That one of the reasons I love being here is we get to go to Hawaii every year, and we can go to Florida, and we can go to these. We're at a place right now where Duke will play us. We're not a waste of their time if they play us. Like, well, we definitely don't go into that game thinking, we're going to go upset Duke, but we go in there knowing like we're not going to waste anyone's time during this game. We'll give them a run for their money, and I think that's why they've had us back. I think we played them 3 times in the last 4 years. So, that's definitely a big perk. Division II has a real high emphasis on regional play. So you get more points, I guess, for lack of better terms, for the postseason if you play within your region. But our region is so unique because there's 2 leagues in California where they don't need to play anyone, and they definitely don't want to play us. I've told them we'll come down for free. You don't even need to give us a guarantee, and we'll play you. And we've gotten dodged like that, or say, hey, we'll give you 10 grand to come up to UAA, and oh no, that we can't afford it, coach. We're gonna need 20. I'm like, oh, okay. So it's just one of those things where we'll play anyone anywhere. And the nice part is if we do get to play them anywhere, I'd rather it be in warm weather during December or November.
Absolutely. With your style and you and I at my program, we do run the amoeba, and we obviously, your mayhem style lends to steals and turnovers, but we wanted to flip the script a little bit and kind of talk about those first steps to your offense. So you create that turnover, you got the ball, you're in transition or in an advantage situation. obviously you create a lot of those. You create, 23.6 turnovers a game, points off turnovers a game. What are you emphasizing in transition in those advantage situations?
We drill that a lot. We try to, put them through different drills and stuff and practice to create a number of situations. And we talk about spacing a lot, ways to put the defense at a disadvantage, where, I think anytime you're on defense and you don't have an advantage, you're trying to make them take a contested jumper or a mid-range jumper, and not like a wide open three or a layup, in those particular situations. So, we talk a lot about, what spots we want to get the ball to, how we want that spacing to look, and then to have an attack mentality. There's so many, the Euro steps and the all these other same foot, same hand finishes and all that, just to go up strong and try to get an and one, go through the defender, those types of things. So we just try to keep it simple in that regard. But, anytime that we have numbers, we definitely want to have an attack mentality in that regard.
Okay, so let's push that to half court, right? You get half court, dead ball situation. I'm sure teams probably try to do a lot of different things to you, whether they think they can slow you down, right? Slow the pace, whatever. What are some of your half court concepts? And do you have a lot of those that flow from zone to man, or do you have specific stuff either way for each type of defense you would see?
So our half court offense is like a 4-out 1-in. It's real similar to what Villanova men do. I had learned it back when Jay Wright was at Hofstra. I had bought Championship Productions DVD on the 4-out 1-in motion with Jay Wright and the swishy pants and all that. And it just made sense to me. And I think one of the reasons is because Jay Wright's just an elite teacher of basketball. But I just felt that particular offense, you can change it with the times. It initially was kind of this high-low kind of offense, where the two posts were working together in tandem and you were trying to get a lot of high-low. And now, since the game's different and it's more predicated around spacing around the three-point line, we've, really emphasized where those spaces need to be, and that, we're looking to put pressure on the defense by trying to get into the lane via ball screens or attacking closeouts. So we work a lot on that. And it's a true motion. So it's, you're kind of reading and reacting a little bit based on where the ball goes. And then we just work with our bigs on, we do a lot of slip screen action stuff where they're making reads on why they're slipping or where they're supposed to slip. Sometimes we'll have them go to the corner, or sometimes we'll have them slip to the basket. So just working on spacing like that. And then we probably run, I'd say 50 sets. So they have to know 50 sets. You know how coaching goes. You have 10 that you really like at the beginning of the year, and then you don't like them anymore, and you got 10 more,
Right.
So it equals 50, but if you ask them to run a set that they were running in the second game, they'd forget it, So yeah, we do that. We do a lot of false action. The coach that I really stole a lot of sets from it was Stu Morrill at Utah State back in the day on the men's side. He had unbelievable stuff. And that's when Utah State was making, Sweet 16 runs pretty consistently out of the Mountain West Conference. And I just thought, man, this, his team is just so disciplined, and they don't turn the ball over, and they can disguise the same look, running different false actions into it. So we do a lot of that. And I think teaching the ladies, we can get the same look. We can run it out of different formations or run something else into it. They understand basketball more conceptually rather than just being a robot and running set after set.
Mm-hmm. Well, now you're going to have everybody looking up Stu Morrill's actions after this podcast episode, Coach. So obviously, we're called the After the Timeout podcast. So just a little bit of some after the timeout stuff. Let's say you're giving a team trouble, defensively, you're creating a lot of turnovers, you're creating a lot of disadvantages for them. They call a timeout. What's a common adjustment by the other team that might give you trouble coming out of a timeout?
And it's their ball?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I think, that every team I feel like has one or two sets that they will have in their back pocket as they come against our defense, because it's not traditional. And the more that we've run it in our league, and it's the same coaches, the good part about it is that it's made us better, because it's we have to go back on film and like, man, how did we get beat in this one? The ones that will initially started to give us the most troubles when teams started to ball screen us quite a bit. And then they would take the ball screen to advance the ball to the other side on a reversal, and then overload it with like a baseline runner coming across. So they would, our bottom would have to come out and they'd whip it down into the corner, and they'd end up with like an open three or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
More recently, it's been where they've started to overload the bottom of our zone. And so they've kind of stuck with like a double low, and they run some sort of action out of the double low to try to seal the backside or something like that. So those are some of the things. I think it's always tricky when you run a matchup zone and you have to defend a sideline out of bounds play. We've gone back and forth on, let's come out in man, or let's, sometimes I ask our players. But those are, I would say, those two actions are the most common that we see when teams come out of their timeouts to try to throw us off balance a little bit.
So you kind of led into it too. You talk about maybe going man or whatever. What are some of the things you like to do after a timeout? I know I like sometimes, we were just playing good man. Well, hey, maybe we're gonna go zone for a possession, and because they just called a timeout to say we're gonna how to defend man, So what are some things you like to do with that?
We do shell every single day in practice, man-to-man shell, every day.
Right.
And we are a terrible man-to-man defensive team because we just don't get a lot of game reps in it, right? We can't really break it down. And I keep our man-to-man principles really simple because I don't want to spend too much time. I just want them to understand the basics of it, right? But I will use our man defense as like a junk D. And there'd be times where it'd be like 3 seconds left and we're up 2 and they're on the sideline down of bounds, and we say, yeah, we're going to go man. And we have given up more 3-point looks going into man than we do in our matchup zone. So I have not done that anymore. I learned my lesson the hard way. But sometimes I think what's really effective out of a timeout is if you're able to press. So it's their ball and they have to bring it all the way up the floor. You can press and then fall back into man, because they're going to be so worried about what their press break is. And amoeba really looks like man as you start to kind of align and everybody gets their responsibilities. That you can run man, and all of a sudden they start running their baseline cutter through, and their man follows them, and the point guard starts looking over at the coach like they're not an amoeba anymore. So that we've done that a couple of times, but I feel really strongly about riding the horse that you came in on. And I sometimes as a zone coach, you second guess yourself if they hit a couple threes or something like that, and you start thinking like, holy smoke, should we go back into man? And I can't remember. I was listening to some coach before, because I definitely didn't come up with this, but he said, in our program we have 20 sets that can get us 3-point shots against man-to-man defense. And we have like 2 zone sets that we know we can get a 3. And that's kind of my philosophy, that if they get a 3, okay, they ran one of their 2 sets, against us, or whether they got a lucky skip pass or something like that. But that's kind of my philosophy on that.
All right, so now let's have a little fun to finish up here. So both Todd and I were looking at your Twitter profile, and we saw, former professional jump shooter. So, we want to know from you, in all levels of basketball, NBA, college, and the history of basketball, who are your top 5 shooters of all time?
So I thought about this when I got that question. I really thought about it, and I was kind of going back and forth because some of the old school ballers, like Larry Bird and some of the Chris Mullin and those guys. So I'll give you a reason for the first one. Obviously, I have to say Steph Curry. I've actually seen him work out before, and I've never seen anything more impressive in my life in terms of someone where if he was at Chuck E. Cheese, he'd break the game. He's that guy. So Steph Curry, one of the best shooter that I've seen in a game in person. Jason Capono, if you guys remember Jason Capono
UCLA.
from UCLA. He was pretty impressive. I watched him play when I was in high school. I think you have to have Larry Bird in that mix. And then for the 4 and the 5, it was kind of a little dicey for me because there's so many of them. But I would say I would put at 4 and 5. It's difficult, but my brother worked at a place called Shoot 360, which basically was, when the NOAA system was out and it was really popular, and it'd tell you your arc and it would tell you where the ball fell in. And they tested everyone. They test, all these NBA level guys came in. And the guy that had the most consistent shot in terms of his arc and where the ball landed in the basket was Chris Mullin. And so I have to add him in there. And then I would probably say, since I'm a women's coach, I would have to say Diana Taurasi. I think she's had over 1,100 threes in her career so far. And I mean, I think she's 40 and she's still killing it, So I would say Taurasi. You have to add her in the mix too. So that would be my top 5.
Zazadil, you want to do yours or do you want me to do mine?
Oh, I don't know. That's hard. Like I struggled with the list as well. I got all kinds. I put like Paige. I thought about Paige Stojakovic. I'm always, I grew up watching the 90s Bulls. So Reggie Miller was a guy that was always giving it to the Bulls, even like a guy like Mark Price, right? I was a little bit young for that, but Mark Price could fill it up. Craig Hodges, maybe for when he was on the Bulls, he could fill it up. I'm more of an old school like that, those guys. But
see, I gotta add, growing up, I gotta add just JJ Redick at Duke. Again, I'm a Bulls guy, so I gotta put Steve Kerr in there. Yeah, it was funny, Coach. You were talking about Steph Curry. The second best shooter after Curry might be his coach.
Yeah.
And then, I obviously put Bird and Miller. And then my 5th one was Ray Allen. I never saw somebody just with the most consistent mechanics of the times Ray Allen would catch and shoot, whether it was the Bucks or the Celtics or so those were kind of my 5. But I like you said, I think all of us, we could have sat down for the next half hour and gone through shooters. So. But Coach, we really appreciate you joining us. Can you just let us and our listeners know, how can they get in touch with you or how can they follow your program?
Yeah. Our website is goseawolves.com. And my email, my contacts on there. So if they contact me, I always try to contact people back. I've gotten so many emails about, I have a separate folder for all the times that I've gotten emails on Amoeba and everything like that, that I don't care if they're a middle school coach or whatever. I always make sure and get back to them. It's important to me that I do that. So you can get a hold of me, and our schedule's up. I mean, our season's obviously canceled up here. So we're looking forward to next year, but goseawolves.com.
Coach, I do appreciate it. Coaches out there, I promise I am probably one of those coaches in that folder. So he will definitely reach back out to you. So definitely follow Coach and his program. He does a phenomenal job. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the After the Timeout podcast. For more information and upcoming episodes, follow us on Twitter at After the Timeout. You can find all of our episodes on Spotify by searching After the Timeout. Thank you for listening.